Okay, think about this. The question that you have asked me to share the outline on says, I'm reading it out for you. The profitability of firms is a measure of their efficiency. The profitability of firms is a measure of their efficiency. The higher the profit, greater the efficiency. Higher profits should therefore be encouraged. Do you support this argument, right? So the argument that is provided to us in the question says that higher profitability shows higher efficiency, and therefore profitability should be encouraged, right? Profitability should be encouraged. Why? Because if there will be more profitability, that shows that firms are more efficient, right? Profitability, right? So the question is saying that higher profitability is because of higher efficiency, and therefore higher profitability should be encouraged because that means that firms are more efficient, right? And do we support this argument or not? That is what we need to discuss for 25 marks. Okay. So first of all, for this question, Isha, you have to explain what is profitability. So you will say that profit is the amount of money that the business saves from its operations. So the products that the company produces, and the money that the company makes from selling its products, that could be a good or a service, is called revenue. And after you have paid all of your expenses or cost from the revenue, the amount that you save, the amount that the shareholders or the business owners save at the end of the day from their business operations is known as profit. So first of all, you have to explain this very basic concept of profit. Then you have to explain how do firms maximize profit, right? So obviously for this question, how do firms maximize profit? So for that, you will explain that on the graph, and even otherwise, the firms maximize their profit by producing at the output where their marginal revenue is equals to their marginal cost, right? We do know this. How do firms maximize their profit, right? So for that, you will say that firms maximize their profit through producing at the level where the marginal revenue of the company is equals to marginal cost. Then if you want to a little bit explain, which would be better, that what is marginal revenue and what is marginal cost. So you would say that marginal revenue is the additional revenue that the company makes from the sale of its good. So change in revenue due to change in output. And similarly, marginal cost is the change in cost due to change in output. So marginal cost would be change in cost due to change in output. Is this making sense? Is this simple? Okay. Now this being said, then you can also show it on a graph if you want to, right? That what is the shape of the marginal revenue and what is the shape of the marginal cost. Normally, if this is the demand curve, normal firms have downward sloping demand curve, which also shows you the price, right? And then to the left of this demand curve is your marginal revenue, right? So like this. So this is how you draw marginal revenue on the graph. And then you have an upward sloping line, J-shaped graph, and that is marginal cost. So where the marginal cost of a business intersects with its marginal revenue, that is its profit maximizing quantity. That is the business profit maximizing quantity. And this is the quantity that every business would want to produce because that would give the business highest level of profit. Why so? Because the difference between the revenue and the cost would be greatest. The difference between the revenue and the cost is greatest when the company is producing at the level where the marginal revenue of a company is equals to its marginal cost. Any confusion so far? Anything that's not clear, right? Okay. Then you will say, what is efficiency? So since the question is making a relationship between profitability and efficiency, so it's important that you explain both of these two concepts in detail before you jump on to the final argument that whether profitability is linked with efficiency or is it not linked, or what is the idea, right? Are you following me? I have to mention profit maximization. No. I mean, yeah, that's a very good question. So I think you will be fine. Okay, that's a very good question, but I don't think so. You need to explain it separately. That's why I took a very normal down sloping demand curve, because we know if we would have made the demand curve for perfect competition, it would have been a straight horizontal line. So you don't need to do that, right? One graph, one standard graph would be enough for that. One standard graph would be enough, right? Okay. Now then you have to explain what is efficiency. So you will need to explain efficiency in detail you will say efficiency means making the best possible use of resources, and economic efficiency is made up of two components, which is allocative efficiency and productive efficiency. Then we will define both of these two components of efficiency. So productive efficiency, as you already know, is producing output at the lowest possible cost. So what is productive efficiency? Producing something at the lowest possible cost, which is calculated as output over input. So if this formula is maximized, output over input is maximized, that means that the business has productive efficiency, right? And then allocative efficiency is about producing the right type of goods in the right quantities, right type of goods in right quantities. And how do we know if a company is allocatively efficient? In optimal quantities. We know if a business is allocatively efficient or not by looking at whether the company is producing at price equals to marginal cost or not. So if the company is producing at the level where marginal cost of the business is equals to its price, then it means that the company is allocatively efficient, otherwise it's not, right? Then you can also make the graphs for these two components of efficiency. So you will draw the graph for productive efficiency through the ATC, right? So we know ATC is a U-shaped graph which shows you the average total cost. So you have average total cost on the y-axis, you have output on the x-axis, and it will be a U-shaped graphs. So if you're producing on the lowest possible ATC curve, this means that the business is, if you're producing on the lowest possible ATC curve, this means that the business is productively efficient, otherwise it's not, right? And how do you show allocative efficiency? So allocative efficiency, again, as I was showing you right now, that downward sloping is your demand curve of any usual business, right? Which also shows you the price, and the marginal cost is J-shaped upward sloping graph. So where the marginal cost is equals to price, that is the point where the firm is allocatively efficient. If you produce something less than this, that is underproduction and that is not allocatively efficient. And similarly, if you produce anything more than that, again, that is not allocatively efficient. Only this quantity where the price of the product is equal to its marginal cost, that is allocatively efficient. Right. Profitability and economic. No, there is one link. There is one link. Have a look at this. Have a look at this. Think about this. So, Isha, that is the exact point that we're coming to. If your costs are minimized, how do you maximize your profit? Think about it. It's very simple. So if you want to get the highest value on the left-hand side, you have to see what you need to do to this variable and what you need to do to this variable, right? So if you want a bigger number on the left-hand side, so you have two options. Either you can increase this thing, you can increase your revenue, or you can minimize your cost, right? So either by maximizing your revenue or by minimizing your cost, you can maximize your profit. Now, as far as the cost is concerned, right? Obviously, revenue has nothing to do with efficiency, so we're not going to talk about it right now. So if you want to minimize your cost, what do you need to achieve? So for that, you need to achieve productive efficiency. You need to achieve productive efficiency. Think about this. If price is fixed, let's assume the price at which the business is selling its products is fixed, whatever it is, right? But it will definitely make a difference whether you're operating on point A or you're operating on point B or you're operating on point C. And you can see for yourself that if the company is operating on point C, then its profit will be maximized compared to if it's operating on A and B. Do you agree with me? Did you get this? Do you agree with me or not? Right? So this shows, right? Yeah, this shows obviously allocative efficiency has nothing to do with profit maximization, right? But the productive efficiency has to do with profit maximization, because if you're minimizing your cost, then it means that the value of your profit on the left-hand side of the equation will be maximized, right? So this is what you will explain, and then you will explain. Then you will also refer to the idea, because the question was saying that profits should be encouraged. That is what the statement was actually saying. Profits should be encouraged. So first of all, let me give you a quick overview once again. Profit should be encouraged. So the question was saying that since higher profitability comes from higher efficiency, therefore profitability should be encouraged. Do you agree with the statement? That was the entire statement that was given to you in the question for 25 marks. So you've explained what is profitability. You define that, explain how companies maximize their profit by reducing at the level where marginal revenue is equals to marginal cost. Then you explain what is efficiency. You explain the two components of efficiency and all that, right, with the help of graphs and all that. Then you would say that profits can either be maximized by maximizing your revenue. Profits can be maximized by a firm by either maximizing its revenue or by minimizing its cost. So either you can maximize this thing and get higher profits, or you can minimize your cost and get higher profits, right? So coming back to the point, you would say that not always higher profits show higher efficiency. Yes, sometimes they do. Sometimes higher profits do represent more efficiency because that means that the cost of the business would be lower, but not always. Think of monopoly. We know monopoly is not productively efficient and it doesn't need to. Monopoly is not productively efficient and it doesn't need to, because monopoly has inelastic demand. It's the only producer in the market and it can charge higher prices to maximize its revenue, which again means that they will be earning abnormal profit. Same goes for oligopoly. Oligopoly is not always cost efficient. Why? Because they can do collusion, and through collusion they form a cartel and they can exploit consumers and charge higher prices and all that stuff, right? Are you getting me? Are you getting me? So the only market structure where firms have to be productively efficient to even survive in the market is perfect competition. Why so? Because the prices are fixed. Isha, you remember we talked about this, that prices in perfect competition, how prices in perfect competition determined? So they are determined through the market forces of demand and supply. Think about this. When you make the graph, right, for what is that called? For perfect competition, you know that, sorry, why is that happening? You know that it is the market forces of demand and supply that determine the price for the good, right? Have a look at this. So it is the market forces of demand and supply that determine the price of the good. So upward sloping is the supply for the good, downward sloping is the demand for the good, and you have price on the y-axis, and this is the graph for the industry. And where the market demand and market supply of the good intersect, so where the market demand and market supply of the good intersect, that is the price of each unit of the good in the market. So this is the price of each unit of the good in the market, which means, right. So we are just discussing a specific question that Isha asked, right? So we started the class, I think 10 minutes ago, right? So after this, if you have any other question, if you have any questions, we'll discuss those, or else we'll do some questions from the past papers, right? Okay, are you getting me? So think about this, where these two intersect, where the market demand and market supply intersect in perfect competition, that is the price at which perfect competition has to sell. That is where the perfect competition has to sell. Therefore, it means that perfect competition has no option of influencing the prices, right? So firm in perfect competition has no ability to influence the market price, and therefore the only thing that it can do to maximize its profit is to minimize its cost. So the only thing that is available in perfect competition to maximize its profit is to minimize its cost. That's the thing. Right, sure. Arbab, I'll take your questions. Is this simple? Any confusion so far? Anything that's not clear? Anything you want to ask me? Yeah. Okay. Is this good? Right? Isha, so this is the entire discussion that you need to have for this question. Great. Yes, Arbab, you can share your questions. Yeah, it was. It was. So think about this. It's always think about this. The wording in paper four can be tricky, right? So in tomorrow's exam, if you come across a question, essay question especially, where you see that the wording is tricky and you're not very sure what to write in that question, it is better that you choose another question about which you are sure what to be included as the answer, rather than trying to attempt a question which is confusing and you are not really able to understand what the question is asking, right? So for tomorrow, the tip is, especially for the essay questions, read all the essay questions, 6 essay questions very carefully, right? And see which of those you know the best, both A and B parts. And then even before starting answering that, just make some bullet points on the answers, on the answer sheet, to make sure that you know exact points that you will include in that, and then get down to answering the question. So that's a better way, rather than just jumping onto a question and then in the middle of the question realizing that you don't know a lot about it. Got it? Easy. Right. Yes, 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 yes. Think about this. So the idea is pretty simple. Let me tell you again. So you have 2 hours, 15 minutes. So the total time for paper 4 is 2 hours, 15 minutes, which makes it 120, say, sorry, 120 plus 35 is, sorry, 135. So you have 135 minutes in total, right? Which means, and out of like this total time has to be divided for one case study. And Bob, are you sharing your question? So you will have one case study and 2 essay questions, right? Now that means that case study usually doesn't take much time. So case study maximum 30 minutes is what usually is enough, right? So even if you assign 35 minutes for this, even if you assign 35 minutes for case study, which is good enough time to complete your case study, you will still have 50 minutes each for your essay question, 50 minutes each, right? And even if you spend 5 minutes planning, which is quite a lot of time for planning, normally 2-3 minutes are enough, right? Even if you spend 5 minutes planning on each essay question before you start writing, you will still have 45 minutes of non-stop writing for each essay question, which is a lot of time to write a lot. Okay, do you have any particular question, Arbab? And I'm having problem how to show transfer earnings and economic rent law, although I know them. Okay, I'll answer that. I'll answer this question first: transfer earning and economic rent, and then above, for the second thing that you asked me, that policies to correct market failure. Then I'll come to that. Okay, now think about this. We said that the total earnings of labor are divided in 2 categories. So the total earnings of labor are divided in 2 categories, right? What are the 2 categories? Economic rent and transfer earnings, right? And we do know the definition of each of these two, right? So transfer earnings is the opportunity cost. Transfer earning is the minimum amount. You can basically define it in 2 ways. So transfer payment is the minimum amount that is needed to keep the labor in the current use, right? So transfer payment is the minimum amount that is needed to keep the labor in the current use, right? Now, so for instance, if someone is working, I've given you examples. So have a look at this. If someone is working as a pilot and that person earns, let's say, 50,000 rupees per year, right? That person earns how much? $50,000 per year. In the second best use of his labor, so if that guy wouldn't have been a pilot, he would have been perhaps a banker, right? And as a banker, that person would have earned, let's say, $40,000 per year, right? Students, are you following me? Now, how much is his transfer payments? So how much is his transfer payments? So currently that person is working as a pilot and earning $50,000 per year, whereas as a banker, which is his second best use of his time, he would have earned $40,000 per year. So what is his transfer payments? Right, $40,000 exactly, because that is the minimum compensation that is needed to keep him in the current use. So think about this. If from 50, this person's earnings dropped down to 45,000 because COVID hit, COVID is here, and a lot of pilots lost their jobs and everything. So even if this person's earning dropped down to 45,000, this person will still prefer to work as a pilot because 45,000 is greater than 40,000, right? So the minimum compensation that this person needs to keep working as a pilot is how much? That is 40,000, and that is what his transfer payments are. What is economic rent? Economic rent is any amount above transfer payments, right? So current salary, have a look at this. So how do you calculate economic rent? Economic rent is calculated by subtracting, economic rent is calculated by subtracting your transfer payments from your current earnings. So how much? Let me show you, right? So current earnings minus transfer payments. So what you earn above your transfer payments is your economic rent, right? Right? So if this person, as I was showing you, 50,000, he earns as a pilot $50,000 per year, and his transfer payments, like the second best use of his time is being a banker, where he earns $40,000. So that means that he's currently earning 10,000 in excess, right? Compared to the second best use of his time. So economic rent is the amount that a person is earning above his opportunity cost. Is this making sense, right? Exactly. Current transfer earnings, absolutely current, absolutely, right? Okay, now about how do we show it on a graph? That's very simple. Have a look at this, right? So what you will do is actually, what you will do is that you will draw the normal downward sloping, you'll draw the normal downward sloping demand curve and normal upward sloping supply curve, right? Normal down sloping demand and upward sloping supply curve. Okay, now have a look at this. So this is the supply of labor, right? And this is down sloping demand for labor. Okay, on the y-axis you have wages, and on the x-axis you have quantity of labor, right? Quantity Q of labor. Okay, now have a look at this. So the current wages that this labor is earning is where the demand and supply of labor intersect, which is this level, which is this point. Is this simple? Is it making sense? Students, any confusion about it? Okay, now think about this. So what you will do about, so this is W1 is the wage that each unit of labor is earning, that each person is earning. So this is the average wage, right? W1 is the wage that each person in this occupation is earning, right? That is what it shows. And how many people are hired in this occupation? Q1 quantity is the Q1 is the quantity of labor that is hired in the profession. Now the area, listen to this carefully, area below, let me choose a different color. The area below wage and above supply, the area below wage and above supply is your economic rent. So this triangle that I'm shading over here is your economic rent, right? So this is your economic rent, and the area below supply curve and above x-axis is your transfer payment. So have a look at this. Area below supply and above x-axis will be your transfer payments. So this trapezium sort of a thing that I'm shading right now is your transfer earnings. Is it making sense? So this is what you need to remember. So this is your transfer earnings. So this is how you show the two things on the graph. Is it making sense? Arbab, is this clear? Any confusion, anything that you did not understand? And it will be different based on the elasticity. So if the supply of labor is perfectly elastic, have a look at this. If the supply of labor is perfectly elastic, then all of this would be what? Arbab and Isha, are you getting me? If the supply of labor is perfectly inelastic, which means that there is hardly anyone who can work in that occupation, right? So it's very unique type of skill set. When is supply perfectly inelastic? So supply of labor is perfectly inelastic when there are very few people who are able to work, in that occupation, right? So then all of this will be your what? Economic rent. All of this will be your economic rent. All of this will be your economic rent and no transfer earnings. Is it making sense? Right? And another extreme case would be where the supply of labor is perfectly elastic. What type of labor has perfectly elastic supply? Let me give you an example. So think of construction workers. So construction workers are oftentimes not skilled at all, and they just have their manual abilities. So they are just using their manual energies, right? Physical energies to produce a product, right? So they are just doing, let's say, manual work, lifting weight, and transporting things from here and there and all that stuff. So where the supply and demand for labor intersect in this case, in in which case the supply of labor is perfectly elastic. So all of your earnings, all of the earnings that the labor will be making would be transfer earnings. So there will be no economic rent, only transfer earnings. No economic rent, only transfer earnings. Is it making sense? Easy? Okay, yeah, do join back. Easy? Any confusion? Albab, do you want me to ask? Okay. If this is clear, then I'll move to your second question. Okay. The second question that you asked me, how to policies to correct market failure. Yeah. Okay, have a look at this. So when the supply of labor is perfectly elastic, so there are two extreme cases. When the supply of labor is perfectly inelastic, right? So that means that this type of skill set is not easily available, in the market, perfectly inelastic. So one good example of perfectly inelastic supply would be of very talented actors, or very talented singers, or very talented sports stars, right? That's why we say that their supply is perfectly inelastic, because there is only one Babar Azam in the world, right? So are you getting me? After yesterday's match, we can do that, right? So in this case, all of this will be your economic rent. And in another case, in the other opposite example, where the supply of labor is perfectly elastic. Now, this is perfectly elastic. What it actually shows is that technically anyone can do the job that this person is doing, right? So this can be thought of as construction workers. Construction workers, you must have seen, during construction of a building, there are a lot of people who are lifting weights and who are moving the machinery here and there. They don't have any, not plumbers, not electrician, because they have a unique type of skill set. It is normal people who are lifting weight and all that, right? So those people have perfectly elastic supply, and what they're earning is that all of their earning is transfer earnings, no economic rent involved. All of their earnings is just transfer earnings and no economic rent. So that is what you need to remember. Is this clear? Is this simple? Right. Type of cost is not that important, right? Okay, so type of cost. Do you have an exact question, or you just want to? So cost, usually you will not see, you will not see a question that is just related to cost. Usually you will not see a question that is directly asking about the types of cost, but obviously understanding of cost is important so that you can determine, the profit maximization thing and all that. Right? Is this making sense? So you will not get a full-fledged essay questions. You will not get a full-fledged essay questions about, right? About cost, but obviously understanding of cost is important in case you have to answer how firms maximize their profit and all that. Okay. Now, can I move to your other question, Arbab? So the other question that you asked me, that what are the policies used to correct market failure? Now think about this. There are different types of market failure. What is market failure? Market failure is when the market fails to achieve economic efficiency. What is market failure? When the market fails to achieve economic efficiency, right? Either productive efficiency is missing, or either productive efficiency is missing, or allocative efficiency is missing. Now, what are some cases of market failure? Let me tell you. So the first could be monopoly, right? What happens in monopoly? There's one firm that has complete control of the market, or a very high market share, and that firm is exploiting consumers in terms of charging high prices and things like that. So that is exactly. Then another case is externalities. We know there is positive externality, there's negative externalities, right? We discussed that in our classes. We'll do it again, right? Then you have merit and demerit goods also make a case of market failure, though they were part of AS, right? So merit and demerit goods are part of AS syllabus, but you can totally mention those in your A2. exam as well, right? Merit goods we know are underconsumed, demerit goods are overconsumed, right? Then you have information asymmetry. Exactly. Information asymmetry is when one group in the market has more information compared to the other group. And the ideal example of information asymmetry is when you are buying something secondhand. Think about this. So if you go to buy a secondhand car or a secondhand phone or a secondhand product like from OLX, the biggest challenge, what is the biggest challenge? You don't know the quality of the good. There is no guarantee, there is no warranty, and you can't really tell if that product is high quality or low quality. So that is an ideal example of information asymmetry, right? So these are some cases of market failure. Okay. Now, first, let's talk about one by one. So how would government correct the problem of monopoly? Now, think about this. The problem that happens in monopoly is that monopoly is underproducing. The monopoly is underproducing, right? And whoa, okay, the monopoly is underproducing. Okay, so you will have normal downward sloping demand curve, right? To the left of your demand curve is your marginal revenue, right? Like this, and then you have J-shaped marginal cost, right? And then you have U-shaped average total cost graph. We have U-shaped average total cost graph, and marginal cost always passes from the lowest point of the ATC. Any confusion so far? Students, is it making sense? Laws and regulations, yes, exactly, right? So this downward sloping was this upper graph is your demand curve, which also shows you the price. To the left of that is your marginal revenue over here. And then this J-shaped graph is your marginal cost, and this U-shaped graph is your ATC. Okay, now students, have a look at this. What is the profit maximization quantity? So on the y-axis, you have price and cost. And on the x-axis, you have price and cost on the y-axis, and you have output on the x-axis. Okay, now students, have a look at this. So the output level at which any firm maximizes its profit is where the marginal revenue is equals to marginal cost. So the point where marginal revenue is intersecting with marginal cost is this point, right? Where the orange and the Ferozi line are intersecting. So this is the profit maximization quantity for a monopoly, right? On the other hand, what is allocative efficiency? Exactly. Where is allocative efficiency? Allocative efficiency, we have always talked, where the price of the good is equals to marginal cost. So green line and Ferozi line are intersecting over here. And this is the point where the price of the good is equals to its marginal cost. So you bring this dotted line down, and you label it as QA. QA means allocatively efficient output level. So QA is higher than QP, which means that this monopoly, or any monopoly for that matter, will be underproducing. Monopolies always underproduce. Any confusion about this? Now, one solution that is available with the government is to enforce marginal cost pricing. What is marginal cost pricing? Marginal cost pricing is that the government makes it compulsory for the monopoly that the monopoly has to set its price at the level where it is equals to its marginal cost. So monopoly cannot set a higher price than this. So monopoly has to set a price where the price is equals to marginal cost, which would mean where B is equals to MC, exactly, which means that the firm would be producing at this output level, monopoly will be producing at this output level and will be charging P1 for its units. The price will be P1 and the quantity produced will be QA. So this is what it's known as enforced marginal cost pricing. Otherwise, in the natural environment, the monopoly would have charged how much? Otherwise, the monopoly would have on its own, without any government intervention, charged this much price, because you just extended this QP level up and see where is this intersecting with the demand curve. So otherwise, the monopoly would have charged PM and would have produced at QP, right? Are you getting? So that's one way of doing it. Another way that the government, controls monopoly is by injecting more competition. Average cost pricing. Okay. Have you read it somewhere? Just give me a second. Let me recheck with the recheck average cost pricing, average tend to produce less than the optimal contribution prices of the government may be a tool to regulate the monopolist may charge. With the market demand curve. Yeah. Okay, that means the same thing. Right. Yeah, where the right. So average cost pricing would be. Have a look at this, Isha and Arbab. So average cost pricing would be. Okay, just give me a second. Arbab, just give me a second. Right. So average cost pricing is when the price is equals to average cost, and the marginal cost pricing is when the price is equals to marginal cost. So if the government is imposing average cost pricing, so government would make sure that the price is even lower than what I was telling you, right? At this level. Is making sense? So when the price is equals to average total cost, when price is equals to ATC, that is average cost pricing. That is another thing that the government can do to ensure that the monopolists do not exploit consumer, average cost pricing. And you have marginal cost pricing where price is equals to marginal cost. This is marginal cost pricing. But both types of pricing is intended to achieve the same objective, that is to right to exploit, stop monopoly from exploiting consumers. Okay, now coming back to your question, Arbab, have a look at this, think about this. So first of all, forget about this and just focus on what the monopoly produces, right? So monopoly produces at the level, monopoly will always produce at the level where monopoly will produce at the level where price, where marginal cost is equals to marginal revenue. Like every firm produces at the level where marginal cost is equals to marginal revenue because that is the profit maximization quantity. This is making sense, right? So you could see that this is your marginal cost, right? And this is your marginal cost and this is your marginal revenue. Have a look at this. So this Ferozi line is your marginal cost, the downward sloping horizontal line is your marginal revenue. The two were intersecting over here. You brought the dotted line down and you labeled it as QP, which is the profit maximization quantity. You took it up, you extended this line up to see where is this intersecting with the demand curve, and that is the price that the monopoly will charge. Is this simple? This is making sense, right? Is this clear up till now? Right? Okay, great. And the difference, obviously, the difference between the price and the ATC would be the abnormal profit that the monopoly will make. The difference between the price and the ATC is this shaded region, rectangle, is the abnormal profit that the monopoly will make. So is this clear so far? Right? Okay. Now moving on, this is problematic. Why is this problematic? Let me explain you. This is problematic because allocative efficiency is not being achieved. How do we know that allocative efficiency is not achieved? Because allocative efficiency is where the price, where allocative efficiency is the output level where the price of the product is equals to its marginal cost, where the price of the good is equals to its marginal cost. So that means where the green line intersects with the Ferozi line. Is it making sense? So that is where the two lines are intersecting. Arbab, are you following me? So you bring that dotted line down because this green line is your demand curve, which shows you the price. And this Ferozi line is your marginal cost. So where the two intersect, that is your allocatively efficient output level. So I brought this dotted line down and I labeled it as QA, which is allocatively efficient output level. Any confusion so far? Any confusion so far? Right? Now, this being said, we can see from the graph that the monopoly is underproducing. From this graph, we can see that the monopoly is underproducing. Right? Now, how can government fix this underproduction? This is allocatively inefficient. So to fix this, the government will make a rule that enforce marginal cost pricing. Now, what is marginal cost pricing? Marginal cost pricing is exactly where allocative efficiency exists, because this is the point where the price of the good would be equal to its marginal cost, where the price of the good would be equal to its marginal cost. So the monopoly will be required to produce at this output level and charge this price level, right? So are you getting me? So instead of charging PM that the monopoly would have charged otherwise, now with government intervention, the monopoly will be charging this much price P1 and will be producing this much output Q1. Is making sense? Any confusion so far? So that is one way how governments regulate monopoly. That is one way how governments regulate monopoly. Any confusion so far? Arbab? Is it making sense or is it still confusing? Yeah. Is this clear? Okay, just give me a second. Let me connect my laptop to the charger. Just give me a second. I'll be back. Yes. So why QP is at there, shouldn't it be at MR? QP is at where MR is equals to MC. QP is at where MR is equals to MC. Think about this. Look at it again. Look at it again. Above, you have to pay attention. Okay, have a look at this. So let's look at this one more time. Right? Okay, have a look at this. Very tricky. Okay, so have a look at this. Now, where the marginal cost, where's the marginal revenue? This orange line to the left of demand curve is your marginal revenue, orange line, right? Let me choose orange, right? So this is your marginal revenue and this rosy line is your marginal cost, right? Where are the two intersecting? The two are intersecting over here. Is it making sense? This is your downward sloping is your marginal revenue. This upward sloping is your marginal cost. Where are the two intersecting? They are intersecting at this point. So you'll bring the dotted line down. From this point, you'll bring the dotted line down and you label it as QP because that is the profit maximization quantity for any firm. Where the marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, that is the profit maximization quantity for any firm. Is this making sense? Right? Now, how do you calculate the profit from here? You bring this dotted line up. You bring this dotted line up, see where this is cutting with the demand curve. You see where is this intersecting with the demand curve, which shows you the price. And then you connect it to the y-axis. And then you connect it to the y-axis and you label it as PM, right? So I'm just writing it, labeling it at PM to show that this is the price that the monopoly would have otherwise charged, right? And this is what the ATC of the business is. Then you connect it to the y-axis and the difference between the price and the ATC will show you the abnormal profit that the monopoly will make. Is this clear? Right, great. Now, Why is this not allocatively efficient? This point where the monopoly would have operated otherwise is not allocatively efficient, because we know allocative efficiency is where price is equals to marginal cost. Now let's see where is price equals to marginal cost on this graph. So this downward sloping demand curve also shows you the price, right? And this is your marginal cost. So where are the two intersecting? The two are intersecting at this level. The two are intersecting at this level, right? So you bring this dotted line down, and you label it as QA. This is allocatively efficient output level. Now you can see that QA is higher and QP is less. This means that the monopoly is underproducing. Now to fix that problem, what will the government do? Government will enforce marginal cost pricing. Now what is marginal cost pricing? Marginal cost pricing says that the monopoly has to produce at the level where price is equals to marginal cost. So that technically means that you have to produce at exactly the same level that is allocatively efficient. So that means that the production of monopoly would increase from QP to QA, and the prices of monopoly will drop from PM to P1. That is basically how government tries to fix the problem of monopoly and make it allocatively efficient. Is this clear now? Right? Okay, perfect. Then one more thing that you need to know, apart from this, government also fixes the problem of monopoly by trying to inject more competition in the market. So think about this. Why is there monopoly in the first place? Right? So there is monopoly in the market because of the fact that there are no other players or no big enough players, encouraging entry of new firms, right? So when you reduce the barriers to entry and exit, right, what will that do? Encouraging entry of new firms. So when you make it easier for the new firms to enter the market, more firms will enter the industry, and that will force monopoly to reduce its prices because there will be more competition. Yes, and also to maximum price control. Absolutely, right? Is this clear? Is this simple? So that was the first case of market failure, and we discussed how the government can solve that problem. Now, another case that you can do is have a look at this. So another case of market failure is externalities, right? Now, that was a pretty simple one. We did talk about this, that for externalities, what you do is there are two types of externalities, negative externality and positive externality. In negative externality, there is something that is harmful for other people and you are over consuming it, right? So negative externality is always over consumed. How do we show it on the graph? Have a look at this, right? Okay, so first thing that you need to know is that downward sloping will be your marginal private benefit. Marginal private benefit is always downward sloping, and upward sloping will be your marginal private cost. Where the private benefit and private cost intersect. That is where the market will produce. So market, think about this. Market meaning individuals. So market produces. So when I decide how much of car to consume, when I decide how much of private cars to use, because I know my car and everyone's else car causes pollution on the road, but all I consider is how much is the benefit that I'll get from using my car and how much is the cost in terms of the fuel that I will have to pay for that, right? So the market will be consuming at the level where private benefit is equals to private cost. Easy, right? Is this simple? But because this is negative externality. So when I use my car, what happens when I use my car? That causes negative externality, right? Right? In terms of pollution, my using car is causing pollution in the society. So that means that the marginal social cost will be higher than marginal private cost. Because we know what is social cost made up of? Social cost is made up of private cost plus external cost. What is social cost made up of? Private cost, which the person who is directly involved has to pay, like the driver. And what is external cost? External cost is the cost that is faced by the third party in the sense like pollution and so on and so forth, right? So that is external cost. So private cost plus external cost gives you social cost. So when you add the external cost to the private cost, that gives you social cost, right? And that means that social cost will be higher than your private cost. Is this simple? Is this easy? Is this making sense? Right? Now, this being said, yeah, Isha, what's your question? Okay, now think about this. The society should have produced, and the society should have produced at this level, like consume. In this case, we're talking about the cars. So socially desirable is where marginal social benefit is equals to, where marginal social benefit is equals to marginal social cost. That is where the society should consume. So society should consume at QS. Is it making sense? Right. Okay, so you should think about this. It will totally depend on the question. It will depend what exactly is the question about. If the question is entirely about, market failure and how government solves those market failure, then you have to talk about all types of market failure, right? But if the question was about efficiency and it said that, markets are always efficient, right? Markets are always efficient. Now, you do know that markets are not always efficient because there can be some cases of there can be some cases of market failure. Then in that question, you will first talk about efficiency and situation where efficiency exists. And then in the second half of the question, you talk about externalities and other cases of market failure, but you do not need to go in a lot of detail. You can just briefly mention and say that markets are not always efficient, and the reasons why markets are not always efficient is because of market failure, and market failure exists in the form of monopoly, in the form of negative and positive externalities, in the form of information asymmetry, in the form of merit and demerit goods, and so on. Right, Isha? Does it make sense? So you would need to see what exactly, if the question's entire focus is on market failure, then ideally, yes, you have to talk about all types and also explain how these problems are solved. Okay, so you're talking about externalities like production and consumption externality, further divided into positive and negative. Okay, I get your question. So think about this. No. In neither case, until unless, and you will never get a question like that, until unless the question is asking you about that explain production and consumption externalities, positive and negative, then it makes 4 cases in total, right?